Okay, the reason you're all here today is to learn about cyber resilience, and we're going to dive into that. The subtitle here is Surviving a 21-Day Cyber Attack. Hopefully that was intriguing, but you may ask why a 21-day cyber attack? Anyone want to guess? Ethan, want to guess why it's 21 days?
I would assume because it's going to take 21 days to recover or 21 days of downtime.
You're right. 21 days is the average downtime for a ransomware attack. So we're going to have a lot to think about as we go through this. Obviously, the goal with cyber resilience is to prevent those events from happening, right? We don't, but we need to be smart and go ahead and have a plan B to prepare just in case the worst does happen. And I think it makes sense to prepare for a 21-day event, even though you may not, that's average. But still, you need to have these things in mind. So our agenda for today, we're going to do a quick review about the current state of cybersecurity, and then we're going to dive into understanding what cyber resilience is all about. And there are five critical components of that. We're going to go through all five of those: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Some best practices are going to be sprinkled in along the way here. And then if we have time at the end, we'll do Q&A. If you have questions along the way, go ahead and post those in the chat, and we'll try to get to those at the end if we have enough time. Okay,
Hey,
well,
Rafe,
yeah.
before you go on, I just want to throw something out there. Number one, I'm already seeing the chats come in, so thank you guys. That means you can definitely hear us. But I'm also, when you mentioned the 21 days, a gentleman just posted in here that it just took him 19 days to recover from
Oh
one. So
gosh.
that 21 days is right along there. So you hit the nail on the head with the subtitle of this webinar.
I see that. DJ, glad you're with us, brother. All right. So when we think of cybersecurity, old school, we used to think of this image here, a guy in a hoodie in his parents' basement trying to hack into places. A lot of these guys did it just for fun, or bragging rights, right? It was kind of like a gang type mentality, the initiation. But today, the reality probably looks more like this. Cybercrime is a big business. So here's a boardroom full of cyber criminals counting up their money. How big of a business is it? Here's some stats for you. The average ransomware payout in 2023 was $1.5 million. The global average cost of a data breach, and that's when you add up the ransom, loss of revenue, fines, remediation, all the expenses that come along with that, could be regulatory fines, penalties, all that fun stuff. Average cost 4.35 million to a business. And just how big is it globally? It's a $9.5 trillion industry now. So it is big business, and they run it like a business. Ransomware, everyone's probably sick to death of hearing about ransomware, but it is on the rise. And I would say, Ethan, you can back me up here, but it's probably the number one disruptor. And we're talking about that 21-day average. It's usually from a ransomware attack.
Yeah, for sure. Ransomware is definitely going to be the thing that takes the whole business down. It's more than just simple email phishing. Somebody gets into your bank account and moves money around. It's more of something that is definitely lock everything down.
Yeah, exactly. So the ransomware model has also evolved, just along with the cybercrime business model. So you've got, if you look at this illustration here, in that top left corner that says RAS, affiliates or RAS is ransomware as a service. That's the point we're at now with ransomware. It's ransomware as a service. So this guy is basically a freelancer, and he's signed up to be an agent for the big crime operation who's in that middle circle there. So his job is to just pick the targets, do things like all the recon efforts, like looking you up on social media, figuring out who your friends are, where you work, who your coworkers are, putting together some kind of compelling and convincing phishing email or phone call or others just to get you to click about whatever it means to get that malware installed. And then from there, the big crime operation takes over. Ethan, share with us how these big crime operations take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the big point here is number one, this seems, if you're just hearing about ransomware as a service and that sort of thing, that's certainly the next evolution of what has happened here, just with these crime operations. And it sounds scary. It doesn't have to be as scary as it sounds. It is the whole point of this slide is simply saying that ransomware is so lucrative, unfortunately, it is so lucrative that now there is true organized crime that is building around it, and they're running a I don't want to call it a true business. I hate to call it that, Rafe, because that's frustrating to me because it's not morally right, it's not ethically right, but it is a true business in that their whole business is just holding people ransom. But it is these crime operations, they actually have entire teams that are nothing but negotiation teams, and they teach people, hey, this is how you negotiate the ransom. Then they may have a whole coding team that's all about building the best ransomware or whatever it may be. So it's just, unfortunately, it's something. I think the point of this slide is it's not going away. It's here to stay. And Rafe, I'm right there with you. I'm tired of talking about it. I really, really wish that we could go back 20 years. Well, maybe not 20 years. I was only 10 years old then. So I don't want to go back that far, but maybe we could go back a few years before all this nonsense, and we could talk about how to make everybody more productive and that sort of thing instead of talking about this. But unfortunately, I don't think that's the reality. We're going to be talking about ransomware and what these guys are doing and how to protect it and how to be resilient in if you do get hit, how do you handle that?
Absolutely. One thing to point out before we move off the slide, if you notice the little "you are here" marker there, that is the point where all of this stuff has happened. We're going around the circle clockwise. All this stuff has happened before you're even aware anything has happened. So the "you are here" usually happens right after you get locked out of your machine. So a lot of things happen prior to that. Moving on, phishing is their best way in. That's another thing we're just sick to death of talking about, but we got to talk about it because it's their number one way in. So 91% of the cyber attacks begin with phishing emails, and 1 in 5 employees are going to click on phishing emails. And then we have AI, which has really only been around about a year in terms of being available to most of the world. So AI is advancing cybercrime as well. One of my favorite things to talk about with AI is the deep fake stuff, and that is getting super scary. So, they've got AI tools that they're using to pull off crimes, and we've got AI tools to help fight those crimes as well. So, moving on. So, let's say something bad does happen. Someone gets ransomware, or a cootie on the computer. How do we react? And are we in panic mode? So we've got some options. We fight or flight. We can cry for help. I love this one. We can just roll over and play dead. But there is a better way, and that better way is having a cyber resilience strategy in place. So what is cyber resilience? New term for a lot of people. Actually been around for a while, but cyber resilience is your ability to prepare for, withstand, and recover from a cyber attack. And there's a formula for this. It's cybersecurity plus business continuity. Those are the two pieces, two halves of cyber resilience, if you will. And it's a cyclical process. So if you start at the top of that circle with that, identify and move around clockwise, protect, detect, respond, recover. We're going to go into all those in depth here in just a moment. So this formula, let's break it down into two pieces. So the first 3 steps are the cybersecurity elements of your cyber resilience strategy. So prepare or identify, protect, detect. So those are the technology phases, which we call phase 1. And then on the right side, steps 4, respond and recover, step 5. Those are your people and process phases. So bringing those all together is the formula for your cyber resilience. So we're going to dive in step 1, which is prepare, identify. So this is where you want to be sure that you're documenting everything. So there's a lot of documenting going on here. You want to Make sure you understand how information is flowing inside your organization. Uh, do you have policies? Are you identifying roles and responsibilities for users on your network in terms of who gets to access what? You want to identify and categorize all your important assets, things like servers, workstations, databases, maybe cloud storage, pretty much everything that's involved in your technology world. And you're going to, of course, map those out. Again, like equipment, even software providers, they need to be involved or on your mind when you're putting this together. And then you should perform an assessment, like a risk assessment. Here's a snippet of a risk assessment. This one's pretty easy to follow because it's just doing red, yellow, green. Green being good, yellow means, hey, there's some caution there, and high means these are some things we've identified that you really want to take a serious look at and be sure we've got some planning around. Just an example here, there's more to this obviously than this one screen. And I'll mention here, these are often tasks that a CIO would do in a larger organization, so chief information officer. And I know a lot of our clients, they don't have a CIO, so we try to be available in that capacity as a VCIO, and then not to be confused with VCSO, which is Chief Security Officer. That is gets way more in depth. But I would just say, Ethan can chime in here. If you're in operations, this is probably falling on you, and this is where, and we'll talk about it here, but you need to work with IT to go through these things.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a theme that you're going to see. Everybody on this webinar is going to see through this whole webinar. The goal, I think, for this, unfortunately, is this is no longer, and maybe you have a slide for this later, Rafe. This is no longer ransomware in general, and any sort of cybersecurity event in general is no longer just an IT issue. It has to involve operations. It's got to involve leadership. It's got to involve a lot of people, just because IT technology in general has become so crucial across the whole board for all of us, and all of our businesses run on some piece of tech. So it's a larger conversation for sure. Operations is
Absolutely.
definitely one of the
Yeah,
largest parts.
absolutely. So more on the identify phase one. When you're thinking about assets, which assets, learning and documenting where they are. Of course, workstations and servers, those are all first things you think of. But something here you may not think of that is important and a risk is the IoT stuff, which is the Internet of Things devices, like your smart thermostat or your smart devices, because they're on your network potentially, and I'll say usually. And there's that famous story of the casino that got hacked through the smart thermometer in the aquarium, and you would never suspect that the aquarium thermometer was a threat to the whole organization's security. So those are other kinds of considerations when you're putting this together. So, and then where are they? Are they on premises in your physical locations? Are they in the cloud? Is it some combination of both? How are they connected? Obviously, you're talking about ISP connections, redundant connections or not. And then are there interdependencies? Are you really leaning on an outside vendor? And don't yell at me for saying this, but the Change Healthcare event is a great example of that. That's it's definitely a dependency. So, and then what kind of controls and protections are in place around those things? Something you can do during this identify phase, which is recommended, is you do a business impact analysis, also known as a BIA. And this just walks you through mapping out and identifying your business processes, which things are going to be critical in terms of recovery, resources required, the recovery priorities. And it's too much to put in a slide, but if you Google the term NIST, BIA template, NIST is a federal government piece, and if you see that URL under there, just make sure you're going to the NIST.gov site if you're going to grab that. But they do provide a Word document to help you through a business impact analysis. All right, Ethan already talked about this a little bit, but this is a team effort, especially operations and IT. So we want to be sure those two departments are aligned relative to your cyber risk management and security issues. So, and this helps improve the visibility, understanding of IT across the organization, and you get away from IT just kind of being in its own bubble over here, right? And uh, there's this creates an awareness of how integrated everything is, especially when IT integrates into your operations. So, and then your users, you want to get your users involved, especially in the education part, cyber awareness, um, help get everyone in a mindset of being in a protective mode or vigilant mode when it comes to cybersecurity. And then things like ensuring you've got the right backup strategies in place.
So, Rafe, two quick comments on this. The first one is I see a comment from Michelle in here about can someone from ComTech help with the business impact analysis? We definitely can. So definitely reach out to us, let us know. We'll be more than happy to talk to you about that. We certainly can help. That's not what these webinars are for necessarily. We're not trying to sell anything. We're just trying to educate, but we're absolutely willing to help. And the second thing is I had already talked about this. You just talked about it, Rafe, as far as including leadership. So some of this, when I talk about this with most end users, this seems to be almost overwhelming. When they think about, I have to identify all these different parts, and I'm like, I don't even know where the data. If you're sitting in this webinar and you're on operation side and you're going, I'm not exactly sure what IoT devices we have on the network or whatever it may be. That's getting into some of the technical weeds. That's understandable. It's definitely have a conversation with your IT provider about that. But what I have found the best way to make sure we're all keeping the right mindset and the way we're including leadership, we're talking about these things, is when you guys, this is just a practical kind of tip, when you guys see those events like Change Healthcare going down or CDK going down, which is the auto dealership that I'm going to be doing a video on very soon, that just happened in the last couple of weeks. When you guys see those articles, take those articles and not only talk about them internally with your team to say, hey, this is what happened. What would our organization do if this happened to us? Or include your IT provider and say, hey, this happened to this organization. I saw the security event. What protections do we have in place to prevent this from happening? And just having, that's the whole point, in my opinion, that's the whole point of these webinars, is just so we all keep this top of mind. And you're not going to, if you're in operations in here, you're not probably going to understand every technical aspect on the back end, but that's perfectly fine. If you have the right mindset and you're at least talking about it in the whole leadership group, then this webinar is a success if you're talking about it just internally.
Very good. And thank you, Ethan, because that is one of the main takeaways here. Before we move on to the protect phase, which is number 2, summing up the phase 1, identify, this is the phase where we want to just document everything. We've identified our risk. We've kind of prioritized those risks, and we've involved both sides of the business, or two pieces of the business anyway, IT and operations. So now you should have an understanding of where everything is, what level of risk is tied to each of those things, and just kind of have a good map of the organization. All right, moving into phase 2, the protect phase. So this is where we're going to protect everything we identified in phase 1. And that's around safeguards, controls, processes, policies, procedures, all that stuff, and managing access to those assets and information. So the goal in this is to reduce the probability of an attack, and then, God forbid, if there is one, we reduce the impact of a successful cyber attack. So some things to look at during this protect phase: are we up to date? Are we being protected against the latest threats? Are we using a disjointed collection of tools? So, Ethan can hop in here, but are the tools talking to each other? Do they work well together? Do they play well together? And are they accomplishing the mission of protecting those assets? And one of those features we're looking for is real-time visibility of everything that's going on in the network with all those assets. Automated enforcement, so to affect enforcement of any of these human process related type breaches, and then knowing what to do if something that just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I think I've already talked about that. That's actually kind of what I was talking about just a moment ago, Rafe, when I said a lot of this is just simply a conversation amongst the management team to talk about, are our defenses protecting against the latest threats? That's working with your management team and your IT team to say, hey, what just happened to Change Healthcare? Could that happen to us? What pieces back are you relying on disjointed products and tools? Is our email security protecting us? If our email security fails and something gets through, then what happens? So having those conversations, it's just a lot of it is just simply, I don't want to make it sound too simple, but it is conversations, and it is a mindset of just, we're keeping this top of mind, that sort of thing. Before we go on, Rafe, I did want to mention one thing that I failed to mention at the beginning of the webinar on Connect. I've seen a lot of people hit the Connect website while we were on this webinar. There's a number of people from out of town, so out of Greensboro, out of Burlington area, that sort of thing. There is a spot on there to grab a hotel room that ComTech is covering for Connect if you are out of town. So I just wanted to highlight that for anybody that's coming from far off. We'd love to have you.
All right, yeah, great. More on Protect Phase 2. So we're protecting and securing all these assets with the tools. Things to consider, protecting like website users. That is a source of risk. Of course, your business critical systems, endpoints, mobile. We need to be sure we're considering mobile users. That's a big thing, a growing thing. And I'll add on to that the bring your own device model. You have a lot of people working from home now on their personal devices, and it's really easy for them to bypass all the protections that we've worked so hard to put in place at the office. For example, firewall, our cyber armor suite, all those type of things. It's really easy for them to just throw that out the window, and they just go down to Best Buy and buy a machine and start hopping on the business network and letting their kids play on the computer and all that. So when we're talking about those policies, it's a good idea to look at a BYOD, which is bring your own device policy at your business. And then looking at things like your supply chain and vendors. A quick example there is, there was an incident last year with a cloud vendor who got hacked through one of the clients who didn't have their machine protected well. And the hackers were able to infiltrate the provider, and then from there go back out to that provider's clients and attacking there. So it looked like a big, they were the spoke in this wheel. So that's a consideration when you're putting all these pieces together in this phase. Some practical tips we're going to sprinkle in here. This idea of least privilege access, which meaning you should have a role-based setup there in the network, meaning you don't just let everybody get to everything. If you don't need to be looking at HR data, you shouldn't have the same access privileges as the HR department, for example, or accounting and so forth. So role-based access there. Training, definitely want to be doing a cyber security awareness training. Weekly is a great idea with the training portal. We're offering that. Again, this webinar is not an ad for ComTech, but you should be on board with the training program, especially one that includes randomized phishing email tests. So keeps you on your toes. Multi-factor, we recommend anywhere that offers you multi-factor authentication, you should enable it. Ethan, you want to chime in on that?
I mean, I feel like we're going over, I feel like some of these people on these webinar probably are like, man, you sound like a broken record. We're only a broken record just because we consistently see it. across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
Some of the
Yeah.
absolute lowest hanging fruit is staff training, making sure your people are actually doing the cybersecurity training that you signed up for, that you're having the weekly training, that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be a 3 hour long training. It could be a 5 minute training once a week or whatever it is. And then
Yeah.
multi-factor, I'm still seeing a ton of people that don't have multi-factor authentication set up on their email, to where when they log into their email, it pops up on their phone and they have to, click approve and they have to put a fingerprint in. I
Yeah.
know it's a pain. It is definitely a little bit more of a frustration, but just think about it. As you set it up, just think about it's also a frustration for the hacker. Because if they happen to get your password, they go to log in and it says, "Hey, put your fingerprint on your phone and approve this." It stopped or slowed down the hacker. I mean, in that case, it would probably stop them. But I know it's frustrating, but just please,
Yeah.
well, I'll stop here on the broken
Okay.
record, but just please
Yeah.
do it. Please
Well,
set it
I
up.
think we'd rather have this mentioned every time versus having the "I told you so" conversation with you later, right? So,
Absolutely.
all right, I threw this in for fun. 7 warning signs that an employee has gone rogue, because employees are risks as well. That's something you need to consider. When the employee unexpectedly fails a background check, says that past employers didn't trust him. This is, the water cooler talk going on. Knows information he shouldn't know. Brags that he can hack a coworker's or the company's system. I think that's funny because a lot of these criminals, the cyber criminals especially, they're fame junkies, right? So uh switches his screen as soon as you're walking up. He didn't want you to see what he was doing. Never takes a vacation and leaves the company angry. So warning signs. All right, let's talk about you as the human firewall. This is important because you are the first line of defense. You need to adopt a security conscious culture in your organization. And like we've already beat to death, continuous training is a big part of that. But you're the superhero in this play, right? You're the first line of defense. So hop into that mindset. And this is worth mentioning again. Moving to the cloud does not mean you just offloaded your cybersecurity responsibilities or your cyber resilience responsibilities. You still need endpoint protection. You still need things like firewalls, patches, and updates on those workstations, because they are a tool for hackers. Even if you are getting to the cloud, uh, you're not off the hook. Okay, so we're moving to the next phase 3, which is the detect phase. All right, with this phase, bring us up to speed. We've identified all of our assets. We've put protection in place. Now we want to make sure we've got proper detection in place. So this enables us to identify an attack quickly, ensure an incident response plan is in place, do an assessment of the effective systems, how fast can we contain an attack if it were to come through, and then just the whole thing's about a timely and effective reaction. And again, why is this important? Because cybercrime is a big business. If you get attacked, it's going to cost you money. We're not going to read this whole slide, but it's just some things that people don't think about when thinking of a cyber attack. They tend to just think, oh, it's computers, it's an IT problem. You could have regulatory fines, you can have law firm retainers, the ransom itself, a lot of things in play here that can cost you time and money. So when we're talking about detect, actually, when we're talking about protect and detect, these last 2 phases, this is a great place to talk about zero trust as the new normal, because zero trust is currently the most practical and ultimate way to protect and detect your network. If you haven't heard zero trust before, it follows this philosophy of never trust, always verify. I like to say the approach here is everything is guilty until proven innocent. In a zero trust model, you're just assuming a breach all the time, right? That's the safest way to approach it, is just you always assume the bad guys are already in there. So using things like least privilege access, for example, as part of that framework lends itself to a good zero trust environment. Some components of zero trust, if you look at the top middle here, a SOC, a security operations center, working with the SIM, which is down here in bottom left, those advanced logging, AI detection, looking for things that look out of the ordinary, alerting a human when something bad does happen or something suspicious happens, I should say. Things like application controls prevent something like an infected Word document from running rampant and doing things it shouldn't. And other, employee training, you see that again, but all these are pieces of a zero trust security bundle. Ransomware detection and isolation is a really good one to talk about, because this tool being on there and the detection phase, if it detected ransomware, it would immediately disconnect that machine from the network. Now we're cleaning up one computer versus 30, 50, 100, or whatever you have on your network. So when we talk about that impact, it really minimizes an impact by having that tool in place.
One thing, one thing I wanted to add there, Rafe, is because us IT people, we tend to go immediately technical when we're talking about a lot of this stuff, like all this, the SIM and the SOC and all of these 3 and 4 letter acronyms, that sort of thing. That's our that's our IT language. But when we talk about zero trust, I always tell everybody it's actually the way that you operate every single day. Typically, most users in their everyday life. The great example, or at least I think it's a good example, is if your plumber walked up to your front door, you don't let the plumber in and say, hey, you can come in and you're welcome to go in my bedroom. Here's the key to the safe. Like, you can do just until you show me that you're doing something malicious, I'm just going to let you do whatever you want. Like, you don't operate that way. Instead, you invite the plumber in and then you close off the door to your bedroom. You hide the key to the safe because the plumber has no reason to be in the safe. It's the exact same thing on your network. It's like, again, to try to put this into a security or a perspective on the IT side, if you have a new employee come in and they need access to a certain area in the server or a certain area in your SharePoint or whatever it may be, you don't just say, oh, okay, yep, we'll just make them a global administrator. We'll make them an administrator of the whole thing. We instead just give permission to a particular thing. So I'm only going to trust you far enough to do what you need to do. So that's kind of the base principle here.
Gotcha. All right, I'm getting a 10-minute warning, so we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. A practical tip: you should undergo regular security assessments, also known as pen tests. It's a great idea to have those at least once a year. I'd say every 6 months is probably a best practice on that. All right, moving into the respond phase. So if you remember, this is where we move into the people and processes part of cyber resilience. So those first 3 steps are all technology phases. Now we're in the people processes. Respond. Detection is no good without a timely response. We just talked about detection. Again, being tech, response, people and processes. One of the things you need to have in place is an incident response plan. And I use the quarterback image here because that's how you need to think of it. Who's got the ball? Something happened. We just detected something. What do? Well, we go to our plan and we follow the plan. Pieces of an incident response plan. So it's a predefined action plan. You're going to include investigating, containing whatever this threat is. Could be several days, could be weeks, could be that at 21-day average. How are we going to eradicate this threat, making sure everything is bad is out of here? And then, we have a clear map of our applications, data, endpoint, assets. That's part of this plan. We're establishing recovery priorities, the business continuity piece, which we're going to talk about next. And then again, notifying leadership. This plan is continuously updated and tested. So it's a living document, if you will. Let's talk about the business continuity piece of that. I think Ethan mentioned this earlier. A cyber attack's not just an IT problem. There's a lot of things to consider on the operations side when you suddenly don't have access to your computers or network or data. Along with that, or other pieces people don't consider if they've never been through this, you've got a whole reputation and crisis management piece of this. So you've got to communicate internally, externally, possibly to the media, possibly going to be communicating with attorneys. who do you want as your spokesperson when this date, when this time comes? It needs to be a pre-assigned, trained, and knowledgeable spokesperson, not the default necessarily. Like everyone just rushes and, hey, let's just throw the CEO out there and let him tell everybody what happened. That might be fine, but has he been trained on how to talk to the media and how to talk to clients and everyone else involved? And it should be a scripted event. Like you've got something kind of canned for if the day ever came where you had to make this public announcement. And
Yeah,
before I move on, go ahead.
I was
Sorry,
going
go
to
ahead.
add, we may be talking about the same thing, Rafe. What we were going to say is, Michelle is asking, can we repeat really quick what the 21 days, as a reminder, that 21 days, the subtitle of this webinar, because it dovetails perfectly into this, is just imagine if your business got hit with ransomware, was hit with a cybersecurity event, the average time to recover is 21 days. So everything Rafe is talking about, imagine for 21 days, what message are we going to be sending to the public as well as internally to our staff to say everything's okay? And back to what Rafe was saying, who is saying that? Is it the CEO? Is it a spokesperson? Just thinking about this stuff ahead of time before an event happens is extremely helpful. That way you don't end up with an event happening and the CEO getting out there and saying, yeah, we've got a serious problem on our hands. We don't know how to fix it. We've been attacked. We can't do business. We just, you
Yeah,
don't want the CEO saying that, even though it may be the truth.
yeah,
You want to spin that in the best possible light.
yeah, exactly. We don't want you don't want a person causing even more panic unnecessarily before the whole story is pieced together. I backed up a couple slides. I did want to mention on business continuity. This is one of my biggest points of the whole presentation. This is where we're talking about continuing operations, right? Because one of the things you could experience during an attack is loss of revenue, not being able to serve your clients, patients, customers, whatever they are. You need to have a plan. Just worst case, if we're going to be down for 21 days, how do we continue to serve our customer base? Does that mean I'm digging up forms out of the closet? Are they even usable or current? And then do our people even know how to use the paper form? And then I'll use healthcare as an example, but it could be any regulatory, it could be financial services. Suddenly I'm writing data on a form. That's a HIPAA issue if I've not already thought ahead about where am I going to keep these forms that have patient data on it or financial information for people. And then I've got to dispose of this stuff. And, there's record keeping and all these considerations. So this is something that needs to be thought through and practiced. And you can do like a tabletop exercise. Just, hey, here's, let's just say we go down. Does everyone know what to do? Where, I keep using paper forms, but where are the forms or where are the tools we're going to use to continue business while we temporarily don't have access to our computers. Okay, last phase, the recovery phase. This is where we're moving through an event and we're starting to, we've got the business continuity piece moving now. People are still able to serve the clients. We're starting to talk about recovering the data and restoring services. So the key to this whole phase is prioritizing. We've identified back in step one with that business impact analysis, what is it most important to bring up first? Because we're trying to keep our clients, patients, customers, whatever your term for them is, we're keeping them first. So first priority is we got to be able to get back to serving them efficiently and effectively. So what does that mean in terms of what gets restored first? That's why we need to prioritize that. And that's prioritized back in that BIA. So we've got a roadmap to reference at this stage because we've already done that in step one. So backups, data recovery, returning to normal operations. Now, when you're planning for this, there's a couple of pieces you need to understand, and that is your recovery time capability and your recovery point capability. Because you can have objectives for those, but they have to be realistic. So testing a data restore, for example, knowing How long does it take us to restore backups? Let's just say the server, we've got a local server, it got completely wiped out. We just need to get like a loaner server or, temporarily. How long would it take to load that thing up, restore all the data? And then recovery point, meaning what do we know or feel good about in terms of our last good backup? What point in time does that represent? If we're doing an hourly incremental backup, theoretically we should be able to go back to the hour or so before the event happened, assuming that there was no corruption there, right? So if we know those things, we can set the objectives. So it may be easier to tell your team, hey, we're going to get a temporary server in here. We know it takes approximately whatever. I don't know. Ethan could probably give me some real numbers, but it's going to take 6 hours to do that. And then we're going to be able to restore back to yesterday at lunch, those type of things. But just knowing that helps you in this stage in terms of planning and setting the right expectations. And a lot of the stuff, again, falls on a chief information officer or a VCSO, security officer. Okay, so we've gone through all the steps, we've restored everything. Now we need to look at the lessons learned, because things are going to happen in that process that you didn't plan for, that now can become part of the plan moving forward. So you're going to adjust your plan. Maybe we ran out of paper forms, or we didn't have current ones, or they weren't usable, or this alternate process we thought we could count on completely failed. It doesn't have to be, it's not all IT lessons learned here. It could be operational lessons learned. Adjust, go back to step one, adjust all the way back through the 5 steps. So again, it's a cyclical process. It's always getting better. All right, we're up against our time.
I know we're
here,
pushing, we're pushing time. So I'll make this point very, very quick. This process is never going to be done. You just mentioned it's a cyclical process, Rafe. It's never done, but it's better to start and make 1 or 2 or 3% incremental progress than wait until you get the perfect plan. So if you're on this webinar and you feel like, man, I am way behind, I haven't done any of this, start at the beginning and just start now. You're probably farther along than you think, is my point. It can seem overwhelming to get started, but it's never fully done.
Exactly. Now, this whole presentation so far has been about risk, right? Managing risk, planning for and navigating risk. One way to share risk or even offload risk, although not completely, but is insuring against that risk with cyber insurance. So this little section here is just to encourage you to take a look at your cyber insurance policy. Be sure you even have one. Only 55% of businesses even have cyber insurance. With all the advances in cybercrime in the past 3 years, the claims have increased 100% and the payouts have increased 200%. So it's a little harder now to apply or renew it. The premiums have gone up some. We're probably going to see that trend continue. But anyway, it's something to take a look at. Be sure you've got something in place. Here's some key pillars of a cyber insurance policy. So it can help with things like prevention, doing those pre-breach assessments, assistance during an event, forensic investigation, legal services, credit monitoring, those type of things, crisis management, helping cover the cost for these things, operations. The big one there is loss of revenue or income from being down, and then liability expenses. You could get sued. In fact, we're going to have an attorney join us soon for a YouTube episode that his whole job is representing businesses that have been breached. And last time I chatted with him, he said, if you have a breach, you're usually looking at a lawsuit within 72 hours. So cyber insurance, great thing to have to cover those type of expenses, just to be safe. All right, the takeaways here: cybercrime is not going away. It's organized crime. Cyber resilience is when you marry cybersecurity with business continuity. Get on a plan, get a cyber resilience program going. Zero trust should be your new normal. Cyber insurance can help you with that risk transfer. And then you are the human firewall.